Hi, and welcome to this Mind, Body, Spirit series on practice. My name is John Ango Gruber. I'm a student and a Dharma holder at the Soji Zen Center in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. With Shuzen Roshi's support and encouragement, we're offering this mini-series of 3 short videos to help navigate the complex feelings, events, and uncertainty that are arising during this global pandemic. In this final segment, I want to reflect on cultivating a spirit of openness at a time when we're experiencing a great deal of disruption and difficulty, both in our lives and in the world around us. Even in the midst of these really unprecedented challenges, we can continue to deepen a spirit of courage, of generosity, and a presence to everything that is arising, just as it is. As we come to see how we ourselves are the embodiment of awareness, we may realize that the way we tend to our own mind and spirit shapes the experience of moving through these complicated times. There are some specific practices to support us in that work, and I'm happy to have a chance to reflect on some of that with you. I'd like to offer some reflections on Zen meditation and awareness practice as a way of working with everything that's arising during these times. Now, you can think of it as part of your set of tools or approaches to the challenging moment that we're all experiencing during this SARS-CoV-2 outbreak, and also the profound disruptions and shifts that we're experiencing as we work to take care of ourselves and also take care of others. So, our physical circumstances, what it's like to be us, those circumstances are determined by things both within and beyond our control. In fact, so much of our circumstance is not in our control. And while that's always been true, this particular time is bringing that truth into really stark focus for many. And so many of us find ourselves at this time a little bit adrift. We're more separated from our familiar routines, from the routines that often ground us and help us to stay in touch with ourselves and who we are. And we're more physically isolated too, isolated from the communities that we're usually connected to, isolated from people who might help to keep us afloat or give us perspective. And perhaps at the same time, we're less certain than ever before about what comes next. And again, we've never really known what comes next, but now, once again, we really see that we don't really know what comes next. And so our minds are filled with all kinds of thoughts and ideas, and they're filled with worries and concerns too, and lots of wondering. At the same time, we might be making a lot of judgments about how things should be, how we should be, as we keep trying to figure out how to respond. How should I respond? How do we react? What should I do? We don't know what to do. And everyone's responding to this time in their own way. And some of us are really struggling to find any kind of grounding or peace or ease. A lot of us are really being challenged and stretched like never before. So Zen meditation offers a really simple posture and practice, a really simple approach to creating some stillness that allows us to take a moment, put everything aside, and really rest in a place of waking up to what this is. So doing Zazen allows us to slow things down. And that allows us to see the subtle things that are arising, both within ourselves and outside of ourselves, or in that space where there isn't a separation between that which is within ourselves and outside ourselves. So understanding more of our emotions that are arising and really experiencing our feelings, slowing down, these are all the first steps in really being able to work with whatever fear and anxiety might be coming up. So we need to slow things down. We need to create the space because a part of us always tries to avoid stillness. We try to avoid space. We try to avoid empty places where the fear might really arise in our awareness, where the truth of our uncertainty might become so clear that we're actually paralyzed. And so we don't make space for uncertainty, for fear and anxiety, and then it can come up in really counterproductive ways that can be unhealthy. It can emerge in a reactivity towards other people, or it can emerge in habits that are actually destructive to ourselves. So in a way, we need to become a kind of witness, a witness to ourselves and to ourselves in the broadest, deepest sense. See, when we observe our own minds, we begin to see that we're constantly spinning stories. We're actually constantly creating stories of how we think we should be or how we think others should be. But when we drop our stories, when we drop our requirements for how things should be in our lives, then we can start to just be in the moment as it is. And out of that being, some new possibilities arise for what we can bring to that moment and to that experience. There's an increasing body of important and really compelling research about our brains. And it provides important insights into what seems to be happening physiologically when we meditate. If we develop a meditation practice, if we start to practice Zazen regularly, things change inside our brain. And as one author notes, both our brains and our psychological tendencies are actually quite malleable. They are changeable. So what we learn, reinforce, and practice can become the ground of what we ourselves become. Some researchers call this intentional neuroplasticity, or they talk about it as the work of engaging in certain habits to cultivate states of mind and ways of being that lead us into some new territory in our own life. And that might actually be coupled to what we could experience as greater fulfillment, well-being, sense of purpose, recognition of our place in this vast cosmos, whatever is happening, a place of belonging with everything that's arising. In other areas, we can learn that regular experiences of particular states of mind or states of being can actually lead to stable changes in our overall development of our sense of self, what we call stage changes. And that shifts what we see and notice in our own life, what we recognize, and therefore what we can work with. All of those things are expanded as we widen the territory of our own awareness. So meditation, Zazen, stillness, a regular practice of stillness, of letting go, of opening ourselves up, leads to a few core perspectives that show up and are strengthened by that practice. The first perspective that's always true, but becomes more clear to us, is that most of what is true in the universe is invisible to us. Most of what is true in the universe is invisible to us. We can't see it, we can't know it, we certainly can't understand it. The second perspective that we recognize is that every truth is partial. Whatever it is that we see, know, believe is partial. It's only a piece of everything that is and everything that's true. And third, all of our experience, all of our experience of being, seeing, knowing, everything that we experience as this self and our perception is filtered. And it's filtered both through our organs of perception and also our organs of interpretation. So underneath those three core perspectives is the awareness that we don't see things as they are. Whatever it is that's happening out there, whatever it is that's experienced by us in here, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We see things and understand things as we ourselves are. And that's the nature of our experience of being. So in a meditation practice, we're opening space. We're in a practice of just letting go and being, becoming a witness, bearing witness, seeing what is just as it is. So in being fully with more of what is as it is, we cultivate more equanimity and evenness, equanimity with things as they are. And that goes hand in hand with a greater disidentification of the ego, disidentification with our needs and requirements, and a deeper recognition of an identity, of a self that's focused on unity, that's beyond simply our own small self and looks at what we are in a deeper, broader sense. And that organization or reorganization of our own sense of being tends to create greater feelings of ease, of well-being. Speaking with residents in rural Namibia, Dan Siegel learned that despite very difficult life circumstances, people found happiness in belonging, in a sense of belonging, belonging to community, belonging to each other, and belonging to the earth and something larger than themselves. And this sense of unity, of connection, of belonging arises as we cultivate a witnessing self that changes our relationship between subject and object. So I want to return for a minute to the connection between our mind and our brains. And they're not the same thing. I can hold your brain. I can even cut a brain in two, but I can't hold your mind. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do really careful, well-controlled neuroscience research on the effects of meditation practice on the brain. And the first thing is that actually finding subjects who regularly engage in this deeply focused, extended meditation is actually much harder than, say, finding people who drink 3 or more cups of coffee every day. So it's hard to find a group that you can really use to generate meaningful data. And then measuring the activity in the brain has its own challenges too. Taking the measurements, whether that's functional MRI or other kinds of brain scans, the instruments you use, and then what the data are really telling you is all pretty complicated. And the data then are really subject to different interpretations. But the thing is, there's some really good evidence for brain changes in meditators that correlate with what people will self-report as changes in their experience of their own life. And to find out what's changing in someone's mind, we need to interpret that by asking them, by saying, what is it like to be you? And really, maybe it's that second set of changes that are more important to us. Whatever it is that underlies the shifts in our experience, whatever it is that structurally or physiologically underlies those changes, is great to understand, but ultimately, most people are seeking to transform the nature of their experience of self, not to create an attractive portrait of their brain for neuroscientists. So in this image that we saw earlier, participants were shown pictures with strong emotional content in a slideshow. And scientists measured the level of activation of the amygdala, which is a structure in the brain that's strongly correlated to the limbic system and the way that our brain processes fear. So participants learned to meditate and engaged in 8 weeks of regular meditation practice. And the result was that the amygdala was measurably less activated when viewing the same kinds of images with a strong emotional content. So see, the seeing hasn't changed. What we see is the same, but the way that we respond to that and what arises when we see it shifts in the very seat of processing fear and emotion. And other studies show changes in the structures of the brain in long-time practitioners. Things like increased folding in the outer layers of the cerebral cortex, what's called gyrification, or increased thickness in the parts of the brain that are associated with attention and processing sensory inputs. So from our understanding of neuroplasticity, these kinds of changes shouldn't surprise us. In fact, reinforcing the neural networks associated with specific kinds of mental activity are likely to change the structures in the brain that support that activity, just like regular workouts of your upper body are likely to change the musculature of the upper arms and shoulders. So I want to invite you to consider some meditation practice as a means of opening some space in your life, even as these outside spaces have in some ways closed down around us during the viral pandemic. And as some space opens up for you, as space opens up in connection with your practice, you may find that the act of becoming more present, that the act of bearing witness to all that is true, to all that is present in our life, all that is present in the world, that becoming fully present to that naturally leads to compassion. See, waking up to the breadth and the depth of the boundless space of the world awakens compassion and awakens the call to do what we can in this moment for the needs of the world. And we say the needs of the world, we include ourselves in that. Where there's loss, we can provide comfort. Where there's sadness, we can provide listening ears and a real presence. Where there's need, we can give what we have to meet that need. It's by taking care of ourselves, tuning the instrument that we are, that we build our capacity to be more present to other beings. We have this expression that not knowing is most intimate. And certainly I think this is a time where we can practice not knowing, where we come to see that there's so much we don't know and that we can't know. And so resting with that, becoming comfortable with that, being present to what's with us at this moment without a need to know what's going to happen next might bring us a little bit more space to simply be with things as they are. Thanks for being here to listen. Take a little space in your life. Make a little space to bring your attention to your awareness, to what's arising for you, what's arising within you, and also to be present for everything that is arising in the world right now. Your practice makes a difference. It makes a difference not only for you, but it makes a difference in the wider world as well.